everyone and welcome back to our channel. So as you are all aware, we had started with the respiratory system. So in this particular video we shall consider the next part of the respiratory system, that is the larynx. Okay, so as you all are familiar with this particular picture of the different organs of the respiratory system. So we have already considered the nose and the pharynx, that is the throat, in the earlier lectures. So we shall continue with the next part into which the air passes as you breathe in, that is the larynx, or it is also called as voice box because it is involved in voice production. Okay, apart from being the passage for the air which you breathe in or breathe out, it also is involved in the voice production because of the vocal cords which are present in this particular region. Okay, so that's the larynx. Okay, so as we have seen that this is the nasal cavity or your nose, external as well as internal nose. Next part is the pharynx. From here the air will move into the larynx. So this particular part, larynx, it is also known as voice box as we have seen. That's because of the involvement in the voice production. Okay, so it's a short passageway which connects the laryngopharynx with the trachea, which is the next part of the respiratory system. Okay, so that's the beginning of your larynx. Okay, so these are the vocal folds which help in voice production. Okay, so movement of air across these vocal cords, it will help in production of the voice or the sound. Okay, or the variations are possible because of these folds. Okay, so it extends from the laryngopharynx. Laryngopharynx, it is the inferior part of the pharynx we have seen, right? Pharynx, it is divided into three parts. Okay, can you all recall what these are? The three parts of the pharynx as per the association of the three parts, okay, with which adjacent part it is associated with, accordingly it is named, right? So it is the nasopharynx, okay, because it is associated with the nose. Next part is the oropharynx because it is associated with the oral cavity, and the last part is the laryngopharynx because it is associated with the larynx, right? This one. Okay, so this larynx, it extends from the inferior portion of the laryngopharynx anteriorly. Okay, and it extend downwards and connect with the trachea, which is the next part. Okay, so somewhere over here. Okay, so that's the location of the larynx. Okay, so if you can relate it with the cervical vertebrae which are present over here. These are your cervical vertebrae, right? Okay, so it extends from the fourth cervical vertebra to the sixth cervical vertebra. Okay, so that's the location of the larynx. Okay, so also it is located anterior to the esophagus also we have seen. Okay, now coming to the walls of the larynx. Okay, so the wall, it is composed of the 9 pieces of cartilage. So that forms the framework of the larynx. Okay, so the total 9 pieces of cartilages it make up the larynx. Okay, now out of these 9 pieces, 3 pieces of cartilage they occur singly. That is, there is only one. That is the thyroid cartilage. Okay, so the thyroid cartilage, that's the one. Okay, now in this particular picture, both the anterior as well as posterior view is depicted. Okay, so this particular picture depicts the anterior view, that is from the front side. As you can see over here, this particular cartilage can be seen, right? So that's the location in your neck. Okay, and this picture depicts the posterior view of the larynx. Okay, now as you can see that this particular cartilage, thyroid cartilage, or it is also known as Adam's apple. So this is located anteriorly, right? So certain structures or certain cartilages, these can be viewed anteriorly, whereas certain cartilages, these are located posteriorly. So that's why both the views are shown in this particular picture. Okay, so that you can relate the position of one cartilage to the another. Okay, so that's your thyroid cartilage. As you can see from the posterior view also. Okay, and next one, the one which occurs singly is the epiglottis. That's the epiglottis, the leaf-like structure. As you can see, it is located in the posterior aspects, right? So from anterior view, as you can see that only the top portion can be seen. Okay, and the third cartilage which exists singly is the cricoid cartilage. Can you all recall this cricoid cartilage? Okay, in the last video also we came across this particular term. Okay, so the pharynx, it extends up to this cricoid cartilage, right? Okay, so these are the 3 cartilages which occur singly. And there are 3 more types of cartilages which occur in pairs. So there are 2 of each type. Okay, so total there will be how many? So there will be 6 of these and 3 of these. So there are total 9 cartilages, and that's your cricoid cartilage. Okay, that's the position of the cricoid cartilage. Okay, now coming to these 3 paired cartilages, let us see where exactly they are located. Okay, the first one, that is arytenoid cartilage. That's the one. As you can see that it's paired, right? And it is located posteriorly. Okay, then the corniculate cartilage. Okay, now corniculate cartilage is located just superior to this arytenoid cartilage, right? It's attached to it, horn like structures. Okay, so that's your corniculate cartilage. And the third type of paired cartilage, that is the cuneiform cartilage. Okay, so that can be seen in the sagittal section. So it's located over here, cuneiform cartilage. So it's located just anterior to the corniculate cartilage. Okay, now out of these paired cartilages, this one is more important, arytenoid cartilage. Okay, so that's because it influences the changes in position and tension of the vocal folds, which are responsible for the speech. Okay, now apart from these cartilages, there are several types of muscles okay, which are connecting the larynx to the structures which are associated with it in the throat. So also there are certain muscles which will attach these different cartilages to each other. Okay, so accordingly these muscles are of two types, the extrinsic muscles. So these are the ones which connect the larynx, the cartilages of the larynx to the other structures in the throat. Whereas the intrinsic muscles, these will connect these cartilages with each other. So accordingly there are different types of muscles which are present. Okay, so we will just have a look at it. So that is your larynx, this is your epiglottis. As you can see, if you can recall the leaf like structure, okay, that is the hyoid bone. Okay, then this is the thyroid cartilage, that is the cricoid cartilage, okay, and these are the folds, the vocal folds which are present within the larynx, right. So these are the folds of the muscles which help in production of the voice or speech. Okay, now just will focus on the muscles, the different types of muscles we will see. Okay, as you can see this one, that is the cricothyroid muscle. So what it will be, intrinsic one or the extrinsic one? What the name implies, cricothyroid muscle. So it is associated with the cricoid cartilage and the thyroid cartilage. That is why it is called as cricothyroid muscles. So this is a type of intrinsic muscle. Then this one is the lateral cricoarytenoid muscle, this one. Okay, so obviously this is also an intrinsic type of muscle, right, because it is connecting the cricoid with the arytenoid cartilage, right. Okay, then this one is the sternothyroid muscle, this one. So what it will be connecting, the thyroid cartilage with the sternum. Okay, so obviously this is a type of extrinsic muscle, right. Okay, then this one is the inferior pharyngeal constrictor muscle. So this is again an extrinsic type of muscle, right, this one. This one is thyrohyoid muscle. So it is connecting the thyroid cartilage with the hyoid bone. So obviously this is an extrinsic type of muscle. Okay, so these are the different types of muscles which are connecting, either connecting the different types of cartilages, these are known as intrinsic muscles, or they may be associating these cartilages with the other structures which are present within the throat, which are known as the extrinsic muscles. Okay, then coming to the cavity of the larynx. Okay, so the cavity of the larynx, this is the space which extends from the entrance into the larynx down up to the inferior border of the cricoid cartilage. Okay, so the cavity which is present, or the lumen which is present within the larynx, that's one. So this is known as the cavity of the larynx. Okay, now portion of this cavity which is present just superior to the vocal folds, these are your vocal folds, right, these two. Okay, so just superior to that, the portion of the cavity of larynx which is present, that is specifically known as vestibule of the larynx. That particular portion of the cavity of larynx, it is known as vestibule of the larynx. Now coming to the different cartilages. Okay, so we will consider what are these different types of cartilages, of what type of cartilage it is made up of, and what are the associated structures, how it is associated with each other. Okay, so coming to the cartilages which occur singly, okay, that is the thyroid cartilage, which is also known as the Adam's apple. Okay, this is the one. Okay, so it comprises of two fused plates of the hyaline cartilage. So, it is made up of the hyaline cartilage and it forms the anterior wall of the larynx, right. It is present anteriorly, right. Okay. So, it is comprising of the two fused plates of hyaline cartilage, that is why it gives the cartilage roughly a triangular shape. Now, in between these cartilages are present certain ligaments which are connecting them with each other. Of course, the muscles are also present, intrinsic muscles, but apart from that there are certain ligaments also which are connecting these cartilages, maybe to one another or to the associated areas which are present in the vicinity. Okay. Now, this particular membrane, that is thyrohyoid membrane, this is the one. What does the name imply? Thyrohyoid membrane. So, what it will be? From the name it is very clear that it is the ligament which is connecting the thyroid cartilage to the hyoid bone. Okay. So, this portion, as you can see, this whitish portion, that is the ligament, thyrohyoid membrane it is called as. Okay. As you can see from in the posterior view also it is visible, right. This is the one. Then the next cartilage which occurs singly is the epiglottis. Epi means over and glottis means tongue. So, this is a cartilage which is roughly about leaf shaped, right. So, as you can see that it is a leaf shaped structure and it is comprising of the elastic cartilage. Okay. Now, this particular cartilage, it has two parts, the stem, this is the one, the stem of the epiglottis, it is the tapering interior portion which is attached to the anterior rim of the thyroid cartilage. It is attached to the thyroid cartilage, right, over here. So, that stem, it is the part at which the epiglottis is attached to the thyroid cartilage, the rim of thyroid cartilage. Okay. Then the superior broader portion, this one, this is known as the leaf. As you can see that it is a leaf like structure, right. So, it is known as the leaf. So, this particular portion, it is actually unattached and it is freely moving. So, it is not attached anywhere. This particular leaf like structure, it is freely movable, it can move up and down like a trap door. Okay. Now, why this particular structure, that is your epiglottis, why this provision is present over here? There must be some reason why it is not associated and why it is freely moving. This we have also considered in the last video also. Now, this is the structure which helps in preventing the food or the drinks from entering into your respiratory tract, right, because the laryngopharynx, it has the opening in both the esophagus as well as the larynx, right. Okay. So, it is this structure which prevents the entry of food and drinks into your respiratory tract. Otherwise, what will happen? your food and your water or your drinks, if it enters into your respiratory tract, it can result in aspiration pneumonia. If the contents aspirate sometimes while vomiting or so. Okay, so if this particular epiglottis, it acts as a trapdoor. It closes off the larynx during the swallowing. Okay, so during swallowing, that's the act of deglutition. The pharynx and the larynx, it rises up. We have seen this act of swallowing also, right? Deglutition we have considered under the digestive system. So the pharynx and the larynx, both, they rise upward in upward direction. So this elevation of the pharynx widens it so that it receives a large amount of food or drinks. And the elevation of the larynx, it causes the epiglottis to move downwards, so that it forms a lid over the glottis, so that the glottis closes off. Okay, so this epiglottis, which is a cartilage, it forms a lid and it closes off the opening known as the glottis. Now, what is this glottis? The glottis, it is a pair of folds of the mucous membrane. So, there are two folds. Okay, so this epiglottis, it will move downwards and it will close off this opening. Okay, so it will close off the glottis. Now, what is glottis? Glottis is the folds of the mucous membrane. Now, there are two types of folds which are present. You can see over here, this is one fold and this is another fold, right, on either sides. Okay, so these are known as the vocal folds. Of course, we will come to these folds a little later. So, epiglottis, it closes off this glottis. Glottis comprises of these folds, this particular part. Okay, so it closes off the space in between them. The space in between these folds is known as rima glottides. So, this particular space, it is closed off. Okay, so, the cavity of larynx, which was open earlier, it will close off. Okay, so, this picture will make it more clear. So, as you are swallowing, the food from your oral cavity enters into the oropharynx. From here, it will move into the laryngopharynx. But after this, where it goes? It will go into the esophagus. This is the esophagus. Anterior to esophagus lies the larynx. Why doesn't it move in this particular direction? That's because this one, epiglottis, it lies posteriorly, right? Okay, so this epiglottis, as the larynx raises upwards, this epiglottis, it moves downwards and it closes off these glottis. Glottis is the vocal folds, right? Folds which are present within the larynx. So, it closes off the larynx, so that any food or drinks do not enter into the larynx. That is your respiratory tract. Now, supposing if small particles of dust or smoke or food or certain liquids, if they pass into the larynx, what will happen? Cough reflex occurs, right, immediately. So, it prevents any substance from moving into your respiratory tract. So, any thing apart from the air doesn't enter the respiratory tract very easily. That is because of this trapdoor, that is the epiglottis. It closes off this particular opening. And by chance, if something enters, you will cough it out immediately. So, that is a defense mechanism which prevents any particulate matter from entering into your respiratory tract. Even the smoke, it causes uneasiness and you cough it out, right? Now let us consider the next cartilage which occurs singly, that is cricoid cartilage. Cricoid means ring like. Okay, that is because of its structure. It's ring like structure. Now this is a sagittal plate. So it's cut into half and you are looking at it from the side, lateral side. Okay, so that's your cricoid cartilage. As you can see, it is cut into half. It is broader posteriorly and it is thin towards the anterior side. This is your anterior side, right? Okay, so it's a single cartilage. So it's a ring like structure. So it forms a ring and it mainly comprises the inferior wall of the larynx. So the inferior most cartilage is the cricoid cartilage. Now this cricoid cartilage, it is attached to the first cartilage of the trachea. Trachea also comprises of rings of cartilages which are incomplete actually, but this one is a complete ring. Okay. So this cricoid cartilage is attached to the tracheal cartilage by means of a ligament called as cricotracheal ligament. This is the one, this whitish portion. So it is attached to the cartilage of the trachea inferiorly, and superiorly there is one more ligament called as the cricothyroid ligament. So what it will connect with? It will connect the cricoid cartilage to the thyroid cartilage, right? So that's known as the cricothyroid ligament. Now this cricoid cartilage, that's the most important part wherein the tracheotomy is carried out. What is this tracheotomy? Have you all ever come across the intubation which is done in the throat? You all must have seen this. So it's in an emergency situation. Okay, so intubation is done through the throat, directly into the trachea for the assisted ventilation. So for that purpose, to make a opening over here in the neck, this is the region which is opened up, cricoid cartilage. Okay, so it's at this particular area wherein the opening is made and intubation is inserted into the trachea. Okay, then coming to the paired cartilages, the first one is the arytenoid cartilage. Arytenoid means ladle like. Okay, so it is visible in the posterior aspects, right? That's the one. So these paired structure, which mainly comprises of the hyaline cartilage. So these are located posteriorly and at the superior border of the cricoid cartilage. That's your cricoid cartilage, right? So it's located superior to the cricoid cartilage. Okay, so these particular cartilages, they form the synovial joints with this cricoid cartilage. Then the next one is the corniculate cartilages, again the paired one. Corniculate means shaped like small horns. So as you can see, these ones, these appear like horns, right? Okay, so these are comprised of the elastic cartilage and they are located at the apex of each arytenoid cartilage, right? Here, these are your arytenoid cartilage. So at the apex of each one are located the paired corniculate cartilages. Then the next paired cartilage is the cuneiform cartilages, wedge shaped or club shaped cartilage. Now, these are mainly comprising of the elastic cartilage. And where they are located? They are located anterior to the corniculate cartilage. That is the cuneiform cartilage. So, this is the lateral aspect, so it is showing only one. There is one more on the other side. So, it is again a paired cartilage located anterior to the corniculate cartilages. So, this in turn supports the vocal folds and the lateral aspects of the epiglottis. That is your epiglottis. So, it is supporting the vocal folds as well as the epiglottis. Okay. Now, coming to the inner lining of the mucosa. Okay. So, the lining of the superior portions of the larynx, superior to the vocal folds. Okay. That's the vocal fold, right? So, superior to that, the mucous membrane, it comprises of non-keratinized stratified squamous epithelium, and inferior to the vocal folds, the lining comprises of pseudo-stratified ciliated columnar epithelium. So, this consists of ciliated columnar epithelial cells, goblet cells and the basal cells. So, in this particular portion, it comprises of the ciliated columnar cells. That means there are cilia which are present. So, what are the cilia? They can beat, right, in a specific direction to move certain mucus or some trapped particles in a certain direction. So, they beat in a particular direction. So, cilia are present in this lower aspects. Goblet cells are present. Goblet cells, what is the function? They produce the mucus, and the basal cells are the supporting cells. Okay. So, whatever mucus is produced by these goblet cells, what is the role of this mucus now? It helps in trapping the dust. Now, remember, such mucus is also secreted in the nasal cavity, right? So, any dust particles or particulate matter that is trapped over the membrane, right, in the mucus. Supposing if the dust particles which are not removed by the upper passages, it can enter into the larynx. So, over here again the mucus is present which will trap the dust particles. So, again it is protective in nature. So, it will prevent the dust particles from entering into the trachea. And the cilia, it will help in removal of the particulate matter which are trapped by the mucus. Now, remember the cilia which are present in the upper respiratory tract, the upper portions, it beats in which direction? Inward direction, right? From the nasal cavity, it moves towards the pharynx, correct? And from here, the particulate matter can either be swallowed or it will be spitted out. That is what we have seen. Whereas the cilia in the lower respiratory tract, that is the ones which are present over here in these regions. So, these beats in such a way that it moves the mucus in the upward direction. So, again it will remove it out of the larynx and it will move from larynx into the pharynx. So, again what will happen? Either it will be swallowed or it will be spitted out. So, again it is a protective function to prevent any particulate matter from entering into your respiratory tract. Okay, so, this is the functions of the larynx. It acts as a passageway also for the air to enter into your respiratory tract. It has a protective function also, the mucus and the cilia, to remove any accidentally entered dust particles. Plus, it is also involved in the voice production, right. So, there are arrangements which are present in this larynx which will help in voice production. So, there are two pairs of folds of the mucous membrane, right. The superior pair, it is known as the ventricular folds, or it is also known as the vestibular folds, or these are also known as the false vocal cords. And the inferior pair, this one, that is the vestibular fold, right, it is paired in nature. And the inferior fold, it is known as the vocal folds, or these are also known as through vocal cords. So, actually these vocal folds are involved in the voice production. That is why these are known as through vocal cords. And these ventricular folds or the vestibular folds, these are actually not involved in the voice production. That is why these are known as the false vocal cords. And the space in between the ventricular folds or the vestibular folds, this one, that is called as rima vestibuli. The folds between the vocal folds, the space in between the vocal folds, that is known as rima glottidis, as we have seen. Okay. Apart from that, laryngeal sinuses or laryngeal ventricles are present. That is why sometimes these are known as ventricular folds. Okay. So, that is the lateral expansion, as you can see over here, of the middle portion of the laryngeal cavity. Okay. So, in between these two folds, the ventricular folds and the vocal folds, lies the laryngeal sinuses. So, it will act as a resonating chamber for variation in the sound. Okay. Now, actually we have seen that the vocal folds are involved in the voice production. So, what is the role of these vestibular folds then? These. So, they actually are not involved in the voice production, but they have certain important roles. Say for example, when you are lifting some heavy object, what happens? If you try to lift 20 kgs weight, 20 or 30 kgs of weight, if you try to lift, what happens? You hold your breath, right, as you try to lift it. So, what makes you possible hold your breath? That is because of these ventricular folds. So, these ventricular folds, these are brought together. So, it closes off this opening, this particular rima vestibuli, it closes off. So, it makes you possible hold the breath against the pressure in the thoracic cavity. So, that is the function of the ventricular folds. It helps in holding the breath. Okay. So, this is to do with the next part of the respiratory system, that is the larynx. Okay. So, we have seen that the air is conveyed from the pharynx into the larynx, and larynx, it acts as a passageway to convey the air further into the next part, that is the trachea. And larynx, it mainly comprises of the 9 cartilages, out of which 3 occurs singly and 3 occurs in pairs. And there are several other structures like muscles, ligaments which connect them each other or with the associated areas in the throat. So, also we have seen the structures which are responsible for the voice production. So, apart from being the passageway for the air, it also helps in voice production. That is why it is called as voice box, the larynx. Okay. So, this is the reference. Thank you for watching.